growing and selling succulent for a long time. The biggest question I have always received is how are my water succulent? But to be honest, I cannot give the full answer to that in just a few words. Watch this video till the end and you will be able to find the answer for yourself. First up, to properly water your succulent, you gotta understand the organization of plant in general and succulent in particular. So let me have you break it down in simple terms.
Now come to the demonstration of succulent function. The part down here is the root, and the part of top obviously is the leaf. This whole setup is how the plant operates. For any plant, the first key ingredient that is needed for photosynthesis is sunlight. Photosynthesis is the process that they turn CO2 into carbon hydrate, which are the basic elements that enable the growth of every part of plant, like the root, stem, or leaf. It's kind of like how our skin, muscle, and bone are built. And water is the other essential ingredient for photosynthesis to actually take place. Without water, there's no photosynthesis happen. And if plant cannot photosynthesis, it won't survive. The roots are the main part that absorb and supply the water to the leaf for photosynthesis. Although succulent can take water through the leaf and stem, but it's not nearly enough to subtend the photosynthesis process. Not only understanding the succulent function, but also knowing the way to watering is very important for the growth of plants. When the plant is lacking 40 to 60 of the water is needed, the photosynthesis process will slow down a lot. If the root can supply enough water, the plant will start to wilt from dehydration. If the plant only wilts for a few days, it's not a big deal. However, if it's wilted for a long time, that's much more serious. In that case, the leaf will gradually dry out, get scorched, and the plant will ultimately die. On the flip side, overwatering is also very dangerous. Photosynthesis only requires a certain amount of water. For example, the process only needs 1 unit of water, but if you provide the plant with 5 units of water, that's way too much. With too much water, the plant cannot use it all enough. The roots end up suffocating, almost like they are drowning. This leads to root rot, and once that happens, it's really hard to save the plant. Especially with succulent, if water sits on a leaf for a long time, it can lead to dangerous fungi and pests. That's why getting the right way to water is so important for this plant.
Alright, now that you have a good grasp on how the plant operates, let's dig into the specifics of watering technique. I don't think we have a one-size-fits-all formula like water succulent every 2 days, or once a week, or twice a month. The truth is you need to water them based on the specific growth stage and the condition at the time.
And we have 3 periods of the succulent growth. First one is watering right after you have pot. Second is when the plant has settled in. And finally is watering at the time you want to shaping and coloring up for your succulent. First, let's focus on the watering need after the plant has just been potted. When you first plant the succulent after they have been trimmed, you need to lightly moisten them. Noted that just moisten, not completely soak the potting soil. Then plant the succulent and cover the surface of the soil with top dressing.
After planting, keep your succulent in a shade area for 7 to 10 days before you start watering regularly. Once that period is up, you can water them more thoroughly if you are using the appropriate potting mix. At this stage, you can also gradually expose them to the light sunshine, maybe 2 hours per day, but still only watering every 7 to 10 days. I bet that you have heard the importance of keeping newly planted succulent in the shade area. But do you know why that is?
The reason is that the plant root system has not fully developed yet. If you expose the newly planted succulent to direct sunlight, and the high water demand of photosynthesis break the limits of the root system, this can lead to the wilting and potentially killing the plant. After 3 or 4 weeks of planting, the succulent will stabilize and the root system will have developed strong enough to absorb water and support the photosynthesis maximum needs. For example, this one that I have been growing for 4 weeks now, and look at all of this root. That's showing the plant is really healthy and that the root system is strong enough to absorb water and support photosynthesis with maximum level.
At this time, you can exposing the succulent to more light, about 6 to 8 hours of sunlight per day. It will really help them with the photosynthesis, allow the stem and leaf quickly grow and dry up.
And you can soak them instead of moistening them. To know if you're watering enough or not, just keep an eye out for when the water starts draining out of the bottom draining hole.
And now you may start wondering how often you should water them. In the next part of the guide, I will bring you a way to setting up a watering schedule for your succulent.
One, the succulent have table, typically 8 months to a year after planting. Many people start thinking about shaping and getting maximum color to make them really eye-catching. This one, I have been planted about 8 months using soil mix, and now I'm gonna put it up to check the roof. Let's use this shovel to take it out. It seems so light. Look like this plant has a lot of potential. Look at all of this roof. They have taken up about 80 to 90 of the soil, which means that this plant is growing very strong. This is the perfect condition for the plant to shape and get maximum color.
This technique requires a few different factors, but the key is to reduce water to create some stress for the plant, which can help bring out the maximum color. Based on my experience, for succulents that are settled in and you want to get maximum color, you should only water them once every 10 to 14 days. Now let's talk about the factor that decide how and when you should water your succulent.
First factor is the growing environment. The environment is the most important thing that determines the growth and the watering need of succulent. The ideal environment for succulent is a sunny environment with low humidity. The watering needs will depend on the specific environment you place your succulent in. For example, in the same garden, a spot that gets 8 hours of direct sun per day will require more water than a shadier spot that only gets 4 hours of sunlight. Next is the soil. The soil is the second most important factor in determining how much water your succulent requires. If the soil drains well, you can water more fluently. But if the soil retains moisture, you must need to water less. Finally is the number of succulent you have. Depends on how many you have planted, and that will determine the different watering methods and technique you need to use alongside it. For example, if you have just a few plants up to a dozen or so, it's very easy to give each of them a care. But for a garden with a large number, like hundreds or even thousands of plants, you will need a specific plant for not spending too much time just to watering the plant. For the small number of succulents, the osmotic method is known as bottom-up watering is the safest approach because there won't be any water left on the leaf. However, this technique can be quite time-intensive. And the most time-consuming method is using a squeeze bottle, watering directly at the soil. This is also a very safe approach, and it prevents any water left on the leaf. Next, soaking the plant in water is the most fun approach, but it is also quite time-consuming and is usually only done with shadow plants. And even this method doesn't complete, avoids water sitting on the leaf. Finally, batch watering with a hose is the most basic and quickest method, which is commonly used. However, this approach does result in water left on the leaf. Water left on the leaf can be quite dangerous. So, if you do end up with water on the leaf, you can use a tissue or a rubber air pump to dry the leaf as quick as possible. With a large number of succulents, that reaching hundreds or even 1,000 of plants, it's just not possible to water each one individually. So, we need to do the following 3 steps. Step 1 is categorize your plant. The most important thing is that you need to categorize the plant according to their individual characteristics. For example, the hardwood type need a bit less direct sunlight compared to most other succulent variety. So, you can place the hardwood in a slightly shadier area and water them less fluently. Or for example, this plant requires a lot of sunlight and the cactus prefer even more intense direct sunlight. This would need to be watered more fluently. Step 2 is watering. Once you have scientifically divided up your garden, you can just turn on the sprinkler and stroking all of them. Step 3. Drying the leaf. For the succulent variety, the rosette-shaped leaf tend to hold a lot of water after watering. Only the sun and wind alone won't be enough to fully evaporate all the moisture. So, you need to use a fan after each watering section. Keep the fan turning until there's no more standing water left on the leaf. And for the part I think that we are all want to know most is setting the watering calendar for succulent. The watering calendar depends a lot on your personal experience and the weather condition at that particular time. However, I will bring for you the simplest way to determine the watering calendar.
Step 1. Remember the date of your most recent watering. Step 2. After 3 days, 5 days or 7 days, depending on the weather condition of that season, you should check if the soil has completely dried out. There are 2 ways to do this.
First, lift up the plant pot. If the pot feels significantly lighter compared to the right after you water, then the soil has dried out. Second, touch on the soils of the pot. If the soils feel lighter and is dry without clumps, it's time to water. Once you have certain the pot has dried out, make a note of that date. For example, if it took 5 days for the soil to dry out since the last watering, then you will want to water again every 5 days after that. You should not water when the weather is hot and sunny out. During the hottest time of the day, the water will evaporate quickly, and the hot water could shock the plant and cause the heat stroke. For that reason, in the early morning is the best time for watering. The advantage of watering in the morning is that by the evening, after a full day of sun, the succulent leaf will have dried out, which help prevent fungal disease. The disadvantage is that during some season, the sun rises faster than normal and make the water evaporate quickly, leading the heat stress on the plant. The late afternoon, after the sun has gone down, is also a good time to water your succulent. Typically, 30 minutes to 1 hour after the sun goes down, you can touch the side of the plant pot and feel that the temperature has dropped and is no longer hot. This is the ideal time to water your succulent. The advantage of watering is the late afternoon or evening is the plant won't get heat stress, which is very beneficial for succulent. The disadvantage is during a rainy or humid season. The water droplet on the leaf overnight can make the plant easy getting fungal disease. To solve this, you can run a fan overnight to blow air across the leaf and help dry them out. Or for the small number of plants, you can use a rubber air pump or tissue to dry the leaf after watering. Each time you water, you must water thoroughly until water starts draining out of the drainer hole at the bottom of the pot. Thoroughly watering ensures the entire root system of the succulent gets hydrated. You mustn't moisten the surface soil only. That could only wet the top root, while the deeper root further down would not get water. Over time, the lower root would dry out and rot. Next is to ensure the leaves are able to dry out. As mentioned earlier, water drop on the leaf can be very dangerous, cause that leads to fungal issue. So no matter what, you should always get the water on the leaf as quick as possible. You know, not a lot of people talk about this, but the top dressing of the succulent pot is super important. When it's hot and sunny out, that top dressing acts like insulation to protect the plant root from the high temperature. The top dressing also helps reduce evaporation, so the potting mix can hold onto moisture better and stay more stable. It also prevents the soil from washing away when you water it, which is great for protecting the plant root system. And let's not forget that decorating top dressing just makes the whole setup look so clean. Or you can also use whatever natural material you have, like regular little pebbles, gravens, or even porcelain. Those work great too. Save the best for last. You know, using a ceramic pot is definitely better than a plastic one for growing succulents. The ceramic material just has some real advantage. For once, ceramic pots are better at insulating the roof from high temperature outside. That ceramic material helps protect the roof from getting too hot. And ceramic pots also have better drainage, not just from the hole in the bottom, but the pot material itself actually allows the soil to wicks and drain water really effectively. And in my opinion, ceramic pots just look more adorable and vintage compared to those plain old plastic pots. It really elevates the whole look. So I would definitely recommend a nice ceramic pot for succulent lover. It's better for the plant and look great too.
So I hope it helpful for you to know how to watering the right way.